At 11:54 a.m. on the 6th of September, a Flight 741 operated from Transworld's airline departed from Frankfurt in Germany. It had 11 crew members and 155 passengers. It was a completely normal flight heading to New York City. Until exactly 35 minutes later, the pilot radio transmissioned something unusual to traffic control. Frankfurt Control, unsure of what the pilot meant, transmissioned a confirm routing. To that, the pilot had no response. Immediately, right after, the controllers saw Flight 741 do something abnormal. The aircraft started steering from the actual route and headed the southeast direction. Confused why the pilot did this, the Flight 741 had crossed over Austria. Frankfurt controllers changed to a new frequency, requesting once again a confirmed routing, but yet again, silence. Controllers were confused about what had happened inside Flight 741, until the very same day, another similar anomaly takes place in Zurich, Switzerland. At 1:14 p.m., Swissair Flight 100 departed, heading towards New York City. It carried 12 crew members and 145 passengers. After departure, the Zurich controllers heard an unknown entity transmission something, confusing for controllers to understand. Pilot then maneuvered the plane from the actual route and went silent for a very long time. 2 planes mysteriously disobeyed flight control that day. Controllers were uncertain if this was done by the pilot or by someone else on both planes. Conspiracies started to grow, but that same fateful day, plane abnormalities started to get out of line around the world. At 1:45 p.m., Flight 219, operated from Israel Airlines, departed from Amsterdam, heading towards New York. This plane carried 10 crew members and 138 passengers. The controllers transmitted a check-in request, but this time, no pilot ever responded. Controllers were convinced this was a hijack, until within 8 minutes of the flight, the controllers saw something abruptly unusual from the pilot's actions. Flight 21 started to nosedive unexpectedly over the North Sea at a rapid pace. Controllers urgently tried to get in contact with Flight 219, but no one responded. Fortunately, the plane did not crash into the ocean. After 8 minutes, the pilot finally responded. A pair of hijackers were on board, and an emergency landing was made in London Heathrow Airport for arrest. These hijackers identified themselves as part of the PFLP, but then just when things seemed to come to an end, at the exact same time, Flight 93, operated from Pan American Airlines, had changed route from Amsterdam to New York. It had 17 crew members and 152 passengers. It headed to Beirut in Lebanon, refueled, and then headed to Cairo in Egypt, and then started circling over Cairo for nearly 2 hours. After 2 hours, it landed with minimal radio response from pilots. It was known that there were consecutive bombs wired in the plane, but something is still unclear. What seemed to be a suicide murder mission, the hijackers instead evacuated crew members and passengers immediately from the plane, rushing everyone to a safe spot, and exploded the plane on scene.
The passengers said it was a miracle that they got out alive. They said the hijackers hadn't given them much time. In the dark, some stumbled out into the desert as they ran from the shots and explosions.
Shortly after, both PFLP hijackers were arrested on scene. Why did they save them? The PFLP is the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It is the second largest faction in the Palestine Liberation Organization, and it is designated as a terrorist organization by the US, Canada, the EU, and Israel. This recording was the hijackers on the intercom announcing their hijacking of Swissair Flight 100. All other aircraft had a similar intercom message from PFLP and headed to Dawson Field Airstrip in Jordan, except Israel Flight 219 and Pan Am Flight 93. As the hijackers, Patrick Arguello, a Nicaraguan American, and Layla Khalid, a Palestinian, failed to hijack Flight 219 due to the captain's heroic maneuvers and passengers fighting back. The hijackers of Pan Am Flight 93 was not able to land at the small Jordan Strip to its jumbo size, causing it to deroute to Cairo. However, that day, PFLP had captivated 300 plus hostages in the open desert for a viable reason.
They will be kept as prisoners of war.
Indefinitely?
As long as we don't get what we want.
So there will be no...
It was clear the PFLP wanted something from each government, otherwise all hostages would have been exploded with the planes. These hijackers were also surprisingly well-mannered.
We do not reprise against anybody. We will treat them very kindly.
According to the passengers that were held captive that day, they found that they didn't want to hurt them. Basic needs of food, water, and medical care were provided. The hijackers also played with the children. Rewinding back, Pan American Flight 93 exploded after the passengers were evacuated by the hijackers. So what were these PFLP hijackers really after? Was it just to garner media attention from the governments? If so, what for? That's when these next 3 weeks turned out to be the longest and largest negotiation periods in aviation history. On September 7th, at Dawson Field Airstrip, the Jordanian Army surrounded Flight 741 and Flight 100. Tension between both forces were at an all-time high. Their demands were direct. PFLP wanted to release PFLP prisoners, Israel, Switzerland, and in the EU. They included the US as well, since they had close relations with Israel to soften decision-making. The governments, of course, refused to that demand. Later that evening, the Jordan army was successful in negotiating for the release of 127 women and children in exchange for pushing back Jordanian forces. The released passengers were taken to an intercontinental hotel in Amman, but the terrorists still had their passports and their demands still were not met. To that, they responded by keeping all Jewish men, women, and children as hostages to pressure Israeli governments to release their members. The governments, of course, did not comply with that again. But then, on September 9th, things got far worse. PFLP hijacked another plane, Flight 775, en route from Mumbai to London, heading to Dawson Field Airstrip, carrying 9 crew members and 105 passengers. This was done to pressure British governments to also release Layla Khalid, who was recently arrested. Now, the PFLP had 200 plus hostages, causing the EU to be involved in the terrorist hijack. September 12th was when Dawson Field hijacking made headlines due to destructive actions from the PFLP. They aggressively pressured the governments by emptying all 3 aircrafts of passengers and exploded all of them at once. From September 16th to September 26th, several more negotiations took place, but on September 27th, the Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, PLO leader Yasser Arafat, and Jordan King Hussein had a meeting to discuss. By the end of September, they agreed to release remaining hostages for 6 PFLP hijackers held in European jails, including Layla Khalid, without punishment. At the end, all hostages were freed and passports were given back. The release of all previous PFLP members and hijackers were headed home. But the important thing to realize that this hijacking could have gotten way worse if the hijackers were not so fair, as most hijackings tend to turn out for the worst. This one turned out to be the best.